Hello everyone, my name is Joel Washira, and if you are new to this channel, we talk about maps, history, and we also give opinions. And today we are going to talk about White Highlands. And I'm sure you might have heard of the term White Highlands, and you might have asked yourself, are there lands that are white? And you might not be that wrong, but I'll tell you why you are not that wrong. Did you know that there was land that was previously reserved for white people only? And those lands were the ones that were known as White Highlands. And these were fertile lands, mostly in the Kenyan highlands. And these lands were reserved for white settlers because they thought that it had similar climates, similar to the one in the UK. And the UK government at the time, the imperial government, allowed their citizens to come to their colonies to farm and also to export back raw materials to their country. And these lands were mostly in present-day Kiambu, Nyeri, Nakuru, Laikipia, and Uasin Gishu. And to make matters worse, is as late as now as 2026, there are still settlers in Kenya, but the constitution allows you to own property, so there might be nothing wrong with that, but it's something that's up for debate. And if you look at it from a perspective of a Kenyan or as an African, you might know that this land was not initially owned by the settlers because they are not natives in Kenya, and this land was taken away from these people. And they might argue that this land was bought from the natives, but you have to look at how was it bought. Like there was one story that we were told when growing up back in Nyeri that they would bring blankets and mirrors and they would give you so that you could give away your land. And whenever they would bring you a mirror, they would show you yourself inside the mirror and you would be fascinated about the mirror and you would agree to give away all your land. But I hope it wasn't a true story. And another thing about these areas, as like I said, Uasin Gishu, Laikipia, Nakuru, Nyeri, and Kiambu, it's because of the red volcanic soil. Like these soils were so good for agriculture. Even today, if you look at Uasin Gishu, it's one of the leading producers of maize, Trans Nzoia. You look at Nyeri, you look at Kiambu, and you also look at other areas in the Rift Valley like Kericho, where tea is still grown to date. And another thing about the crops that they grew coffee, wheat, tea, and also kept livestock. And who are working in these farms? The same Africans who used to own it before. But you have to look at it. It wasn't the settlers were among the last immigrants to come to our continent. They first came as explorers, then as missionaries, then as settlers. And these settlers were the ones who came they came on pretense of being missionaries, but ended up taking away the land. And why is land so important? You have to look at it. The construction of the Kenya-Uganda Railway, like after it was constructed from the port city of Mombasa all the way to Kampala, like they needed to transport, they needed to produce something. Like after this railway was being built, it was funded by the imperial British government, and there were some MPs back in the UK who opposed of the construction of the Kenya-Uganda Railway. That's why it's called the Lunatic Express. It was called that because it was seen as a railway to nowhere. Because as you know, Kenya, Uganda, there is no raw materials. It's not like Southern African countries of Rhodesia, Northern Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia. Those are present day Zambia and Zimbabwe, and also South Africa. Like there was no raw materials such as gold and diamonds, such as South Africa. So the MPs opposed it. But either way, it was built, and so as an excuse and also to show that money didn't go into waste, they had to farm in Kenya and Uganda, and so they were transporting these things. And also sisal, like just know this was happening during the Industrial Revolution in America and Britain, And so as it was happening, the railway was constructed. Like, you can remember the man-eaters of Savo. You will know what happened. I'll tell you guys in a later video about the man-eaters of Savo, and also why Nairobi became the capital city. And if you look at Nairobi, it's near those White Highlands, and most Africans were pushed into reserves. Like where I come from, there was a village reserve, and there are still people in 2026 who still live in those village reserves. And during the Mau Mau uprising, these village reserves were fenced using some sharp sticks and barriers, like so that the fighters wouldn't return to the village for food. And funny enough, the same trenches that were used and spikes, like they still exist. If you go today, you will still find those villages. If you go to Moranga, you will find that there were the villages, they had the numbers. Like if you go to a place like Hangema, you will hear them saying Loco 1, Loco 2, like those were numbers given by the white person, the white man. But later on, after Kenya gained independence, like I said in my first video, we did not win the war of independence. The war of independence like ended. Like the white settler did not leave Kenya because they were so scared. The ones who left Kenya are the ones who sold their land back. And as I said, there are still settlers in Kenya, the ones who never sold their land. And Kenya was given a loan by the British government to buy back the land from the settlers. And this led to Kenyan elites buying the land for themselves. And instead of telling peasant Kenyans to join themselves into groups and contribute money to buy lands for themselves, they ended up, the tycoons bought land for themselves. And you can tell it from today, like the guys who have those large tracts of land that were owned by the white settlers. Yeah, that's how injustices started. Anyway, like when we go to, I know the land issue is a controversial topic in Kenya, but if we don't talk about it, no one will ever talk about it. And if you enjoy this kind of content, like make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and I am hoping to do that before the end of this month. And we are going to talk about Kenya's geography. Then we will later go beyond our country to the rest of the continent and the rest of the globe. And I hope to see you again on my next video. Thank you guys.